For 15 years, Elena Park was the mind behind the curtain, the uncredited engineer who quietly held together the core blockchain infrastructure of Stratagem Technologies. She had architected its enterprise-grade distributed ledger, designed smart contract validation layers, and pioneered compliance-driven modules that allowed their clients to satisfy global regulatory standards. Her work touched everything, from international remittances to cross-border securities tracking, and yet she was never invited to the stage. At product launches, she stood near the back of the conference hall while younger, more telegenic innovation evangelists delivered sound bites lifted word for word from her documentation. Her name never made it onto a single press release. No accolades from the CEO, no stock options proportional to her contributions, just a monthly salary review and the occasional fruit basket during compliance audits. The final straw came not with a bang, but with a smile. During Stratagem's annual Winter Summit, held at an Aspen ski lodge under the ironic slogan, "Decentralize Everything," Elena sat in the back of the mahogany-paneled auditorium, watching a 26-year-old strategy director pitch the company's new initiative. Forward Futures. The goal, he declared, gesturing to a slide full of rainbow arrows and half-formed buzzwords, is to embrace agility and youthful disruption. That means reshaping our leadership pipeline to reflect the world we want to build, not the one we inherited. The applause was loud. Elena clapped too, but slower than the rest. An hour later, she was summoned to a corner meeting room that reeked of kombucha and artificial optimism. There, HR and the VP of Ops sat side by side, their smiles overly practiced. "Elena," began the VP, "we'd like to offer you a consulting transition package. 6 months. Plenty of time to hand off responsibilities. And of course, you'd be mentoring my replacement." She finished for him without blinking. They both nodded, relieved she understood. She didn't argue, she didn't cry, she didn't rage. Instead, Elena smiled, thanked them for the opportunity, signed the exit agreement, and walked out of the meeting room with her back straight and her chin high. If they thought they were discarding a legacy system, they had no idea they were about to crash their own mainframe. That night, back in her quiet bungalow just outside Palo Alto, she poured herself a glass of wine, lit a lavender candle, and opened the cedar drawer of her antique roll-top desk. Inside were hand-drawn diagrams, decades-old notebooks, and a battered USB key. She ran her fingers across a yellowed flowchart titled Hydra Ledger 0.1. She smiled. What began as a sleepless side project following her divorce had turned into the protocol backbone of a billion-dollar company. And yet her name had never been on a single patent. Not one bonus check had ever included the word Hydra Ledger. But that was about to change. In the quiet days that followed the summit, Elena returned to her office with a calm focus that unnerved her colleagues. While others might have packed in a flurry of resentment or left behind a digital mess, Elena treated her offboarding like a final performance, methodical, precise, and unforgettable. She began by organizing 15 years' worth of code bases. Every Git commit she had ever authored was reviewed, annotated, and time-stamped. She linked every critical system call to the appropriate documentation, sometimes rewriting old README files so that even a mid-level developer could follow them without pinging Slack in panic. She flagged dormant bugs, unresolved edge cases, memory leaks, and deprecated methods that no one else dared touch. In a confidential note, she even highlighted a subtle race condition buried deep in Stratagem's validator module. A bug that, under certain latency conditions, could cause double-spend validation errors. It was the kind of thing that could tank a blockchain network if exposed. She resisted the urge to leave it undetected. That wasn't her style. Her last commit was accompanied by a comment, // for the next guardian. May you be less invisible. Then came the real work. Elena turned her attention to Hydra Ledger. Not the implementation Stratagem had been running for years, but the original. The pure, modular framework she had begun developing 5 years ago in her home office, under the dull buzz of a secondhand lamp and a tepid cup of green tea. Unlike Stratagem's version, her prototype was lean, elegant, and untouched by corporate revisions. And most importantly, it was hers. She had coded it on personal equipment during nights and weekends and had kept meticulous records. Digital signatures, build logs, Git history, all stored in secure, immutable vaults and backed by time-stamped third-party notarization. Her employment contract, written long before Stratagem's legal team understood the intricacies of blockchain IP, made no claim to off-hours work using non-company resources. She had checked. Twice. That weekend, while her colleagues celebrated the summit with ski selfies and kombucha spritzers, Elena was at home. She wore her favorite sweatshirt, the one with a faded Linux penguin, and uploaded the cleanroom implementation of Hydra Ledger to a decentralized vault. She split access between two multi-sig wallets stored offline. Then she wrote one final note to herself. This is not revenge. This is reclamation. By Monday morning, she walked into HR for her exit interview. Calm, composed, and carrying a neatly packed box of personal items. A desk plant, an old mechanical keyboard, and a crystal block etched with her 10-year service award. Do you have any proprietary materials in your possession? The HR rep asked, almost mechanically. None, Elena replied truthfully, her smile unshaken. Everything developed during company hours is accounted for. All systems are documented. No IP has been removed. The rep nodded and clicked her checklist without looking up. We wish you the best in your next endeavor. Elena almost laughed. She didn't need luck. Her contract with Archon Core, a secretive blockchain startup run by former regulators and cryptographic dissidents, was already signed. Her title, Chief Protocol Officer, her start date, 1 hour from now. At precisely 7 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday morning, the press release hit the wire. Archon Core acquires exclusive rights to Hydra Ledger, welcomes Elena Park as Chief Protocol Officer. The headline rippled through the fintech and blockchain communities like a seismic shock. Within minutes, social media buzzed, Slack channels erupted, and message boards lit up with speculation. Some thought it was a stunt. Others recognized a power move years in the making. The accompanying announcement wasn't flashy. No marketing fluff, no buzzword salad. Just a clean, detailed roadmap for Hydra Ledger's next phase. Integration with international financial ledgers, improved zero-knowledge proof efficiency, and a modular compliance layer for multi-jurisdictional deployment. It ended with a quiet warning disguised as a footnote. Companies currently using legacy versions of Hydra Ledger will require licensing agreements with Archon Core to remain compliant. Across town, inside the glass walls of Stratagem Technologies headquarters, chaos was unfolding. By 9:30 a.m., the legal team had assembled in the 14th floor war room. Half were still reviewing the terms of Elena's separation agreement. The others were scouring old emails and document archives, desperately looking for any proof that Hydra Ledger belonged to them. At 10:12 a.m., the VP of Engineering sent an email to Elena directly. The subject line read, URGENT, clarification needed. Elena, we believe there may have been a misunderstanding regarding your recent announcement with Archon Core. Could we schedule a quick call to discuss? Best, Randall. Elena didn't respond. Instead, she calmly forwarded the email to Archon's legal counsel, tagging it simply, FYI. At 11:04 a.m., crypto Twitter exploded. A to Blockhead. Stratagem was running Hydra Ledger without owning it? That's like Airbnb realizing their app runs on someone else's server. Decentralize me. Imagine firing your chief architect, then finding out she owns the foundation of your entire stack. A chain novelist, Elena Park just flipped the entire enterprise blockchain industry on its head. By noon, 3 blockchain newsletters had called the move a strategic coup. One called it the patent war of the decade. Inside Archon Core, Elena sat in her new office, minimal, elegant, and quiet. On her desk was a mechanical keyboard, her service crystal from Stratagem, and a hot cup of oolong tea. Greg, Archon's CEO, stepped in with a grin. The reaction's better than expected, he said, handing her a tablet with coverage from 4 tech outlets. You're trending. Elena raised an eyebrow. Let the tech speak, not the headlines. Greg chuckled. They'll listen now. Stratagem's Monday morning all-hands meeting was supposed to be a routine kickoff. a status update on Q1 deliverables, and a peppy motivational talk by the chief culture officer. Instead, it turned into a panic-fueled scramble as news of Elena's announcement began circulating. By 8:45 a.m., internal chat channels were full of questions. Developers were asking whether Hydra Ledger was truly owned by Stratagem. Project managers whispered about the legal implications. Someone had uploaded the Archon Core press release into the general channel. No one from leadership responded. Then at 9:10, a senior engineer posted a Git blame screenshot showing Elena's commit history on Hydra Ledger. Every major module, every foundational layer. It was irrefutable. Elena hadn't just touched the architecture. She was the architect. By 9:45, panic had spread beyond the technical teams. Marketing had paused all campaigns mentioning trustless compliance or next-gen ledger integrity. Sales teams began fielding calls from anxious clients who had seen the news online. A few major accounts had already scheduled emergency meetings. Meanwhile, Elena's inbox was filling rapidly. Former colleagues, most of whom hadn't acknowledged her work in years, were now sending messages of stunned admiration. And, in some cases, desperation. Hey, Elena. Not sure if you remember me from the Data Integrity Task Force. Wondering if Archon is hiring? I always knew you were the brain behind Hydra Ledger. Respect. Any chance we could catch up over coffee? Would you consider consulting for our team? We're struggling. Elena didn't reply. She was too busy onboarding 3 engineers, all of whom had submitted their resignations to Stratagem that very morning. At 10:30 a.m., Stratagem's interim CTO, a former TikTok productivity influencer named Kaylee, called a company-wide town hall. Standing in front of a neon #DecentralizeYourself sign, he tried to stay upbeat. We're entering an exciting new era, he said. Change brings opportunity. We're pivoting toward a crowdsourced consensus model. Think open innovation, community-led governance, and radical adaptability. No one clapped. One developer posted a clown emoji in the chat. Another asked, do we still have legal rights to our core chain? Kale blinked. We're exploring licensing options with relevant stakeholders. The town hall ended 15 minutes early. Over at Archon Core, Elena walked into the afternoon strategy session with Greg and the leadership team. The energy in the room was electric. Hydra Ledger 2.0's integration strategy was moving faster than expected. Several governments and banks had already requested demo meetings. Greg leaned forward. We knew they'd panic, but I didn't expect them to melt down this fast. Elena sipped her tea. They built on trustless systems, but never trusted the people building them. By the end of the day, 5 more resumes from Stratagem engineers arrived in Archon's recruiting inbox. Elena reviewed each one, smiling. Disruption wasn't collateral damage, it was the plan. By Tuesday morning, Stratagem's legal department had filed an injunction request in federal court. The claim? Intellectual property theft. The evidence? Tenuous at best. They cited an internal memo that referenced Elena's ledger layer, emails from 5 years ago with vague phrasing, and one hastily compiled affidavit from a junior engineer who admitted under oath that he didn't understand how the protocol worked. Archon's legal team responded by noon with a precision counterattack, a 300-page dossier that included cryptographic signatures, off-site development logs, commit hashes tied to Elena's personal hardware, and time-stamped records from third-party notarization services. Every line of code was dated, every dependency logged. The court threw out Stratagem's request before the close of business that same day. Still, the damage was done. But not to Elena. Investors had been watching. So had clients. So had regulators. Stratagem's CFO resigned quietly on Wednesday morning. By Thursday, 2 major enterprise clients, both banks, issued formal requests to review their licensing agreements, hinting at potential exits. And on Friday, the board released a terse statement announcing the resignation of the CEO, Kale, to pursue creative projects. Rumor had it he was shopping a documentary series about mindfulness in tech leadership. Back at Archon Core, Elena stood at the center of a war room now filled with strategy whiteboards, a live dashboard of client leads and performance analytics for Hydra Ledger 2.0. The metrics were clear. Adoption rates were climbing. Latency reductions were outperforming industry standards. Compliance modules were receiving praise from even the most cynical European regulators. Greg entered holding 2 printed emails. "The IMF wants a meeting," he said, dropping one paper. "And so does Datawell International." Elena scanned the memos. "Did Stratagem respond to our license terms yet?" "Not yet, but they're stalling. Probably trying to save face while negotiating behind the curtain." Elena nodded. "Let them. Every hour they wait, we gain more ground." That afternoon, Archon released a white paper titled Verifiable Ownership in a Decentralized World. Elena was the lead author. The final section read, "In a truly decentralized system, power lies not in titles or logos, but in proof. And proof, when properly recorded, is immune to revision." Her words were quoted in 4 major industry journals by the following morning. Stratagem, meanwhile, went silent. And silence in a fast-moving industry was its own kind of death. The headlines came fast and relentless. Hydra Ledger disrupts legacy chains. Stratagem's slip-up, a billion-dollar mistake? Elena Park, the quiet architect who outmaneuvered a tech giant. In just 2 weeks, Stratagem's market value had dropped by nearly 28%. Their flagship clients had either migrated or sent clear signals of their intent to do so. Job postings for blockchain engineers flooded their careers page, a digital SOS for anyone who could help patch their unraveling systems. Meanwhile, across the river at Archon Core, Elena was spearheading the most ambitious rollout of her career. Hydra Ledger 2.0 was being implemented across 6 pilot networks, including a cross-border remittance system in Africa, a logistics blockchain for a global shipping consortium, and a municipal voting trial in Scandinavia. The results were staggering: latency reductions of over 60%, fraud detection improvements by 45%, and near-instant consensus finality on hybrid networks. More impressive than the tech, however, was the team. Elena had recruited not only former colleagues, but a diverse mix of open-source contributors, policy advisors, and ethical hackers. In brainstorming sessions, no one talked over her. No one asked her to make herself more presentable before a demo. Her expertise wasn't filtered through a PR lens. It was front and center. One Tuesday morning, during a systems integration meeting, Greg dropped a folder onto the table. "Got a licensing proposal from Stratagem," he said. They finally blinked. Elena opened the folder. The offer was half-hearted. Minimal fees, no public acknowledgement, vague terms about joint ownership. She closed the folder without a word. "You want a counter?" Greg asked. "No," she said. "I want them to try to rebuild. Let them discover how much they never understood." That afternoon, she gave her first media interview since the storm began. In a live webcast for the Global Ledger Network, she sat across from a respected journalist and answered each question with calm precision. "Why not sell Hydra Ledger outright?" the journalist asked. Elena paused. "Because innovation isn't something you auction. It's something you steward." The clip went viral. By week's end, 2 former Stratagem executives issued public statements of apology. One even admitted they had never once read her technical documentation. A confession met with both derision and disbelief. Inside Archon's walls, momentum grew. Elena's roadmap was now the industry's benchmark. Investors were no longer comparing Archon to Stratagem. They were comparing Archon to what the future was supposed to look like. And for the first time in her career, Elena wasn't chasing credibility. She was the standard. Exactly 1 year after her departure from Stratagem, Elena stood backstage at the Blockchain Women in Leadership Summit. The ballroom was buzzing with anticipation. Rows of journalists, venture capitalists, developers, and university students filled the seats beneath chandeliers glittering with institutional respect. The backdrop displayed a single phrase in bold white letters: "Owning your protocol, how to exit a company and take the future with you." Her name this time was not missing from the program. It was emblazoned across every poster, every lanyard badge, and on the Summit app under Keynote Speaker. She was no longer a ghost in someone else's machine. She was the voice that built it. When she stepped onto the stage, applause erupted. But Elena didn't bask in it. She waited, calm and still, until the room settled. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady. "A year ago, I walked out of a company that taught me everything about infrastructure, except how to be valued for it." She told the story plainly, without embellishment. She spoke of building Hydra Ledger in the quiet hours of the night, of watching her work paraded around without credit, and of the resignation that came not with rage but with resolve. She spoke of documentation, of digital proof, of verifiable authorship in a world that rewards loudness over legacy. "No system is truly decentralized," she said, "until the people who build it are given credit without needing to fight for it." After her talk, a dozen young engineers gathered around her. Some asked for advice, some for mentorship. One just said, "Thank you, I was going to quit this week, now I'm not." Later that evening, Greg found her on the summit balcony overlooking the city skyline. He held a slim envelope. "The board wanted me to give you this in person," he said, handing it to her. Inside was a formal notification. Archon Core's valuation had officially surpassed Stratagem Technologies. She let out a quiet breath. Not triumphant, just released. "They're calling it the Elena effect in investor circles," Greg added, half amused. She smiled, almost apologetically. "It was never about revenge." "I know," he said, "but it made a hell of a case study." A breeze passed over the rooftop, tugging gently at the edges of her keynote notes. She folded the envelope, slipped it into her bag, and raised her glass with Greg. "To documentation," she said. "To authorship," he replied. And together, they drank to a future no one could rewrite. 3 months later, Elena sat alone in a quiet office, tucked into the top floor of Archon Core's new headquarters, a converted library with vaulted ceilings and stained glass skylights. The room smelled faintly of old books and fresh solder. Outside her window, the city moved with restless energy. Blockchain had become the backbone of everything from elections to energy grids, and Hydra Ledger's protocols were at the heart of that shift. But Elena wasn't thinking about markets or metrics. She was reading. On her desk was a letter from a university in Brazil. A group of graduate students had used Hydra Ledger to build an open, tamper-proof system for tracking vaccine distribution in underserved rural regions. The letter was handwritten. It ended with, "We don't have much to offer, but we'd love for you to visit. We owe our success to your system and your story." Elena folded the letter carefully, then leaned back in her chair. The moment was quiet, reflective, the kind she rarely allowed herself during years of pushing uphill. The door creaked open. It was Anita, one of the youngest engineers on her team, a rising star. She hesitated. "Sorry, Dr. Park. Just wanted to say, I gave a talk last week about source control and narrative control, about not letting people rewrite your contributions. I used your name. I hope that's okay." Elena smiled. "That's more than okay." Anita shifted her weight. "I guess I just wanted to thank you. Before Archon, I never imagined there was space for people like me in systems like these." "There wasn't," Elena said softly. "But now there is, because we built it." Later that evening, Elena walked the corridors alone, pausing in front of a framed schematic of Hydra Ledger's first architecture, a printout of her original hand-drawn diagram, the one she had once hidden in a drawer. Next to it was a small plaque, Elena Park, Architect of Integrity. She smiled, touched the glass, and turned toward the exit. It was time to go home. Not because she was finished, but because for the first time in her life, she didn't have to fight to be seen. Her name was there now, etched in code, etched in memory, etched in the very systems shaping tomorrow. And that finally was enough.